The quiet power of Camille Thornton. Camille Thornton stepped into the lobby of Armitage and Company with the calm determination of someone who had long ago stopped waiting for permission. She wasn't there for introductions or validation. She had a purpose, and it was far more significant than the shallow glances thrown her way as she walked across the polished marble floor of the towering high-rise. In her hand was a leather portfolio that held the backbone of a federal project worth $300 million. But in the eyes of those she passed, she may as well have been invisible. Her navy blue dress was tailored but understated, her heels practical yet refined. Her natural coils were pinned neatly at the back of her head. But it wasn't her attire that drew the judgment. It was her very presence. A black woman in her 40s, unescorted, unannounced at least in their eyes, entering a space built to keep out anyone who didn't belong to their idea of power. The receptionist, a young man named Trevor, glanced up from his monitor just long enough to register her. His posture shifted slightly, a hint of arrogance tightening his jaw. "Deliveries are handled through the side entrance on 47th, he said without missing a beat. Camille didn't blink. "I'm not here for deliveries." Trevor's smile tightened. "Are you sure? This is a secured meeting space for scheduled appointments only." "I have an appointment," Camille said, sliding a printed confirmation across the counter. "Camille Thornton, here to meet with Mr. Leonard Bryce. 10 a.m. Trevor looked at the name, then back at Camille. A pause, long enough to make his thoughts obvious. The flicker of doubt in his eyes wasn't about the schedulite, was about the person attached to the name. "I'll have to confirm," he said curtly, and turned to make a call that clearly should have happened without hesitation. Camille stepped back and took a seat. The reception area buzzed with idle chatter from other guests. A pair of young analysts whispered as they glanced in her direction, smirking in that practiced way that came from a lifetime of thinking they were the future. She ignored them. Camille was used to being underestimated. She was used to being overlooked. What they didn't understand, what they'd never been taught, is that those like her didn't just survive being overlooked. They grew sharper in the shadows, stronger, quieter, and far more dangerous when the time came to speak. Across the room, a polished executive assistant named Devin stepped out of the elevator, scanning the room. When his eyes landed on Camille, they paused. "Your MS. Thornton?" he asked hesitantly. Camille stood. "Yes." He blinked. "Right this way, please." Trevor stiffened behind his desk. His hand hovered near the phone. He opened his mouth, likely to object, but Devin simply waved him off. "She's expected." The walk to the executive conference suite was long and quiet, a deliberate corridor meant to intimidate visitors. Camille didn't flinch. She'd walked tougher halls, Capitol buildings, defense corridors, energy commissions. But none had quite the stink of performative power that Armitage and Company reeked of. Devin led her not to the main conference room, but to a smaller side office. "The team's still finishing another meeting," he explained, not making eye contact. "They asked me to bring you here for now." Camille nodded. She took a seat in the modest room. The chairs were slightly worn. A small table sat in the corner with water bottles, but no glasses. The walls were bare. This wasn't a space for real decision-making. This was a waiting room in disguise. She didn't complain. She opened her portfolio and reviewed her notes again. She already knew them by heart, but that wasn't the point. It was ritual. Preparation gave her clarity, and clarity was her armor. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. Finally, Leonard Bryce appeared, managing partner and face of Armitage's energy consulting division. He was tall, silver-haired, with a face honed by years of manipulation masquerading as leadership. "MS. Thornton," he said with forced warmth, extending a hand. "Apologies for the delay." "No trouble at all," Camille said, shaking his hand with quiet firmness. "I understand the dynamics." He laughed awkwardly. "Well, let's get you into the big room." The big room. As they stepped into the grand boardroom overlooking Midtown Manhattan, a hush fell across the assembled team. Around the long table were senior executives, strategy consultants, federal contract advisors, most of whom had already seen Camille's name on the itinerary. But clearly, they hadn't expected her. There was a flicker of recognition in the CFO's eyes. Miles Harrow thought it wasn't respectful. It was territorial. She was encroaching, and he didn't like it. "Let's begin," Leonard said. Camille walked to the head of the table, placed her portfolio down, and began her presentation. The screen behind her came alive with structured data, maps, and projections. "This is the Greenspine Infrastructure Initiative," she began. "It's not a proposal. It's a partnership framework backed by a signed federal mandate, with multi-phase funding already allocated." The room was still. Camille continued. Over the next 45 minutes, she outlined the project's scope: a nationwide renewable energy corridor leveraging autonomous freight technology and microgrid integration across underserved regions. She explained the tax incentives, the labor pipeline, the environmental offsets, and the urban-rural integration models. It was airtight, except no one said a word. A few nodded. One or two scribbled notes. But the energy in the room didn't reflect engagement. It reflected resistance. And Camille knew why. She didn't match their vision of leadership. She wasn't part of their private alumni networks or the whispering golf course circles. They hadn't seen her at the last Davos-style summit. She didn't exist in their world, so they were struggling to accept that she might shape it. "Any questions?" she asked. Silence. Finally, Miles cleared his throat. "Ms. Thornton," he began, "this all looks quite ambitious. But how do you plan to navigate the political volatility?" Camille met his eyes. "With grounded partnerships, clear local engagement models, and bipartisan compliance structures already tested in 3 pilot states, as outlined in Section 3.2 of your briefing packet." More silence. Camille closed her presentation and stepped away. The meeting broke up quickly after that. No one offered her a lunch invitation. No one asked for follow-up. She was escorted out with all the corporate grace of someone being politely discarded. Trevor at reception didn't look up as she passed. Outside, the wind cut cold across Fifth Avenue, but Camille didn't shiver. She checked her watch. It was 11:56 a.m. At 12 p.m., she sent a brief email to the Department of Infrastructure and Resilience. Recommendation: Armitage and Company. Not suitable for participation in Phase 1 rollout. Concerns: executive resistance to compliance, lack of cultural alignment. It wasn't a revenge move. It was the truth. And it triggered a chain reaction. By 3 p.m., Camille received a call from Deputy Secretary Langston, asking for a replacement firm. "We need someone who won't let bias get in the way," he said. Camille had names. Prepared. Ready. She spent the next 48 hours reallocating the scope of the $300 million project, splitting it among 3 smaller firms that had previously been considered too junior. She made sure each had local equity partners, community hiring plans, and a real understanding of what the future needed, not just what it used to look like. On Monday morning, Camille walked back into Armitage and Company, this time flanked by 2 federal auditors. Trevor stood up in shock. "I'm here to conduct a compliance inquiry," she said, flashing her credentials. "Please let Mr. Bryce know." The boardroom was cold this time. Bryce didn't offer a handshake. "You could have said something," he said. "I did," Camille replied. "You just didn't hear it." The audit uncovered more than neglect. It found billing irregularities, hiring biases, and falsified outreach logs from 3 other projects. A federal hold was placed on their pending bids. Camille didn't smile. She didn't need to. As she walked out of the building for the final time, she passed Trevor again. This time, he looked up, looked her in the eye. "I didn't know who you were," he said. "No," Camille said, "but you will." And with that, she stepped back into the city, the echo of her heels no longer unnoticed. They had underestimated her, and now they would remember her forever.